and welcome to Sunshine for Your Life. A few years ago, my sister and I went to lunch together. Nothing unusual, we do it frequently, and we were at a friendly's restaurant, not in this city, but in another city. And so we were there having lunch, and a group of teenage boys came in, and we didn't think anything of it. They sat opposite of us in another aisle, and we knew they were there, and we didn't, as I said, we didn't think anything of it until they received their order. One boy ordered, and you're not going to believe this, everything was chocolate. One boy ordered a very large bowl of chocolate ice cream, and he also ordered a chocolate frap, and then he ordered a chocolate ice cream soda, all chocolate, a massive amount of chocolate for anybody, let alone a teenager. And the other boys with him, there were probably about 4 other boys with him, ordered nothing. Absolutely nothing. He ordered it all, and nobody else ordered anything. And so what we expected was there would be extra dishes and extra spoons, and they kind of divvy it all up, but he didn't do that. So what the waitresses did was they gave all of the boys a glass of water like they do, and then they took the order, and when they came back, they actually asked them, you know, would you like to have some extra dishes, or would you like to have any extra spoons? Oh no, he didn't want to do that. So what happened was he ate everything, every single bite he ate, and the other boys got nothing, absolutely nothing. We thought this was so unusual. The waitresses didn't understand it. You could hear them in the background talking about it. He was the only one eating. The others were sipping on a glass of water. Why would that happen? Why would 4 or 5 teenage boys go into a restaurant and one person orders and one person eats and the other boys get nothing except a glass of water? It just seemed so unusual, and it seemed so strange, and it seemed like it was so selfish. Now, I don't know if this was maybe an initiation rite of some kind, or maybe the boys just wanted to be accepted. Teenage children, and they aren't adults yet because the brain does not develop completely until mid-20s. So teenage children really want to be accepted by whoever is the one that's the most popular in school. And they'll do almost anything just to be with the person who's popular because they want to share in that popularity. That's the thing with all teenagers. It just exists, and we have to understand it's a part of normal childhood development. But these kids had nothing. I know if I were going out to eat and everybody else was going to eat and I was going to be sitting there with a glass of water, I probably would refuse to go. That didn't make any sense. Well, the way the boys acted, they did act like they were a little embarrassed about it. And but they were talking, and they were kind of joking, and they were kind of laughing, but everybody noticed it, and everybody thought it was very, very strange. And I thought maybe it was either a rite of passage, it was a way to get accepted, or they were willing to go through it for that purpose. Whatever it wasn't anything that was normal. Now this story, and I thought really this is selfish. This is really selfish, and it's rude of that boy who ate everything. I mean, he did not leave a speck of food. He ate that whole bowl of ice cream. He drank that whole frap. He had all of the ice cream soda that he could. He ate it all. He never shared or anything. And I thought that is terribly, terribly selfish. Well, this story is in sharp contrast to another story about a friend of ours that was a friend of our family. She was a very nice lady, and she and her husband were friends of us for years. In fact, she lived with my parents for a while before she got married. And she and her husband were Catholic, and they would always go to the early Mass on Sunday, and then they would go to McDonald's and they would get their breakfast. And they noticed that there were 2 boys, teenager, young adult boys, that came in and discussing what they would order for breakfast. And they checked their change. All they had was a little change between them. And they decided that they would have a cup of coffee and they would share their cup of coffee. So they ordered 1 cup of coffee for both of them, took an extra straw, and that's what they were going to have for their breakfast. Well, my friend saw that, and she thought, this is not right. She didn't want them to be, without their breakfast, so she went up to the counter, and she ordered 2 of the biggest breakfasts that they had. And then she went over and gave each one of them their breakfast. And they were very, very thankful, and they thanked her for it. And she made a comment that's really important. She says, I want you to have the food, yes, but I also want you to have hope. Really, I'm trying to show you that there is hope. So they thanked her again, and they had their breakfast. And I was with her husband. She died, and I was with her husband at the funeral. And he said, this is one of the reasons I married her. I married her because she tried to be so good to people. And they had a good marriage, and they had several children, and everything worked out well. But she did die. She was getting elderly. But he was telling these stories about how kind she had been. So we need to realize that God takes care of us. God gives us what we need. And sometimes we see people sharing what they have. Other times we don't. I'm going to read a verse from Philippians 4:19. I'm reading it from the NIV version. And this is what it says. It should be on the screen. And my God will meet all your needs according to his glorious riches in Christ Jesus. And my God will meet all your needs according to his glorious riches in Christ Jesus. God has been meeting people's needs for centuries, both in the Old and in the New Testament. And throughout history, he has been taking care of his people, basically the Jews, and then he's taking care of us. He's taking care of those of us who are Christians as well. So throughout the history of mankind, you see God intervening in people's lives to take care of them. So I'm going to mention in history when the Israelis left Egypt, you remember Moses took them out of Egypt, and then they were in the desert. And they were afraid they weren't going to have any food. And they were grumbling against God. And they were saying, take us back to Egypt. We know it was awful. We know we got beaten. We know that it was terrible. But at least we had something to eat. And then they accused Moses of wanting to starve them. You've brought us out in the desert here just so that we can die here. Well, that couldn't be further from the truth. God was giving them the promised land, and they were supposed to go into the promised land, conquer it, and have it as their own land. This is what the purpose of. He wasn't in there leading them away from Egypt to have them be dead because they didn't have food. So God provided them food. And he did it by creating manna. So what is manna? When the people saw it, they didn't know what it was. The meaning of the term manna is, what is it? That was the name of it. What is it? Because no one had seen anything like it. It fell from the sky, and they didn't know what it was. So manna was a small, round flake, and it was used for bread. It tasted like a wafer made with honey. It was delicious and it was sweet. It tasted like a coriander seed. The coriander is a plant in the Eastern Mediterranean, and the seed is tasty and it's delicious and it's very nutritious, and it tasted like that. Now, I'm not saying that manna was a coriander, part of the coriander plant, but that's a kind of a comparison of what it probably tasted like. So this is what they had, and it fell with the dew at night, and they collected it. And manna could be ground in mills, it could be beat in mortars, it could be in pots and boiled, or it could be baked as cakes. Every person had 7 pints of it daily, and on the 6th day they had enough for the Sabbath, so they didn't go out and try to get manna on the Sabbath. That was their holy day. It was a day of rest. So the day before the Sabbath, they had a double amount that they could take. So the interesting thing about manna, the fact that it was delicious, it was sweet, it took care of them, they had it for 40 years, but God provided it for them to take care of them. Now, there are some other things about manna that you need to know. The Jews had enough, but they never had too much. He was right on the spot to give them exactly what they needed, but he never allowed them to hoard. If they gathered too much, they had nothing left over. If they gathered too little, they still had enough. If they left some until morning, it had worms. They couldn't catch it in advance. They couldn't hoard it in advance. It would get wormy. If they tried to gather it on the Sabbath, there was none there because they picked it up the day before. It had been provided the day before. Manna was a free gift from God. It came daily except for the Sabbath, and there was always enough, but it could not be hoarded. There was never too much. So why would God provide just enough and not too much? You know, people are proud of what they have in the bank. If you listen to the candidates, if you listen to Trump, he says, oh, I'm a millionaire, like he could buy the election. I don't have to worry about money. I'm not taking money from anybody. I'm going to take care of my own expenses. What people want to do is they want to collect what they need, and then they want to store it. They want to have some extra. So on the time that the rainy day comes, they'll have enough. They don't have to worry about lacking. But God had another purpose in mind. He wanted to teach them trust. Enough for one day, nothing extra. How do you trust God? Well, you trust God because you sometimes don't have a choice to do anything else. I know in the various surgeries that I have had, and I've had many, I've gone into the operating room without fear. And the reason, I know I can't change anything. Whatever is going to happen is going to happen. I don't have power over what the surgeons do when I'm under anesthesia. I can't tell them what to do or make suggestions, not that I ever would because I don't have the knowledge to do so. But I can't say, is this going all right? I'm under anesthesia. Whatever happens, happens when I'm under anesthesia. So what I have to do is make a decision to trust that God is going to give the surgeons knowledge enough and enough skill to be able to take care of what needs to be taken care of, and then I don't have to worry about it. It's in God's hands. You know, there is a statement that says, I'm going to give all my troubles to God. He's going to be up all night anyway. So at night, I give all my troubles to God, who's going to be up. Let him take care of it. He's not going to worry about it. He has all power. He has all knowledge. So therefore, give all your problems to God and let him take care of them. Well, what he wanted to do was have the Jews learn trust. And what is trust? Knowing that every day they would be fed, every day they would have enough. There wouldn't be any extra, but there would always be enough. And even on the Sabbath when they couldn't pick up any manna, it didn't matter because they were still going to have enough. So trust God day by day by day. Don't hoard, don't catch any of it and keep it for a rainy day. Don't hold on to it in case something happens and you need to have more. God always provides enough. He just steps in on time. He takes care of him. And that was the purpose. They were going to have trust because they were going to have to go into the promised land, and it wasn't going to be given to them. The promised land would not be given to them. What they were going to have to do was to fight for it. But you see, God was the one who was going to be with them as they fought for it. So therefore, they were going to be okay. But they had to remember that it was important for them to trust God day by day by day. So God used manna to teach them trust. And it was always there, and it was always just enough, and they could not hoard it. Now, God knows exactly what you need. There's a lot of ramifications from the story in our own personal life. God knows exactly what you need, and he knows when you need it, and he knows where you need it, and he will bring you to the place where you need to be at the time you need to be there so that he can take care of whatever it is he needs to take care of, and he will intervene at the proper time. You know, we need to depend upon God. There was a lady who took part in a Pavarotti competition. Now, Pavarotti was a tenor. He was one of the greatest singers of all time. And so this woman and many, many others were invited to compete. And whoever won the competition as a singer would get a chance to sing with Pavarotti on stage, to make recordings with him, and it would be the beginning of a very flourishing career. So this woman talked about it, and she was panicked about it. She says, I've got to win. I've got to win. Pavarotti is my future. If I don't win this competition and sing with Pavarotti, I don't have a future. Now, why, as good a singer as she was, would she think that somehow she wouldn't have any future unless Pavarotti helped her with it? I think she was thinking of the fame and the glory of singing with this very famous person. But it turns out if she had been wise, she would have thought, well, if she was a Christian, I can depend upon God. He will give me my future. He will arrange for me to do what I need to do. I will sing wherever he sends me. I don't have to worry about my future. My future is in God's hands, so therefore, why should I worry? Well, the Jews are in a similar situation. We don't have to worry about our food. It looks like we have nothing, but on the next day, there it is. We've got it. So therefore, we learn to trust day by day by day, not by having extra, not because of depending upon somebody else like she was depending upon the singer, but we have our careers because God has opened the doors. There is a verse in Revelation that says, I have opened the door which no man can shut. And we just walk through that door. So our futures are assured. We may not know what they consist of. We may not know exactly what we're doing, but our future is assured because God is going to give it to us. Now, I'm going to read John 6:51 in the NIV version, and this is what it says. This will be on the screen. I am the living bread that came down from heaven. If anyone eats of this bread, he will live forever. Now let me read it again. I am the living bread that came down from heaven. If anyone eats of this bread, he will live forever. He's talking about it in a spiritual sense, of course, because he's saying, if you partake of me, if we come together, if you are one of mine and I am in you, then we are together all the time. And there is no end to what our relationship will be. And you will live forever. If you are a Christian, you will live forever. Now, the next verse I want to read is in John 6:47 and 48. I'm reading it from the NIV version, and this is what it says. I tell you the truth. He who believes has everlasting life. I tell you the truth. He who believes has everlasting life. Now, I'm going to read some verses that are not on the screen, and it relates to all of this. And I'm going to read basically from John 6:48 to 51, but the verses are short. They will not be on the screen. But this is how Jesus thinks of himself, and you can understand it when I read it to you. I am the bread of life. Your fathers ate the manna in the wilderness, and they died. This is the bread which comes down out of heaven, so that one may eat of it and not die. I am the living bread that came down out of heaven. If anyone eats of this bread, he shall live forever. And the bread also which I shall give for the life of the world is my flesh. Now, what he's talking about is his own crucifixion. I'm giving of my blood. I'm giving of my body. You can be a part of this. You can be, all you have to do is to believe in me, and you become part of me, and I'm a part of you, and you will live forever. So I am the bread of life. I sustain you. I take care of you. I work with you. I bring you where you need to be. I support you. I give you everything that you need. I will never leave you. I will never forsake you. The important thing to remember is that God is going to meet your needs. You don't have to depend upon somebody else. That doesn't mean he won't use other people to help you. He may well do that. But it's because of his provision that you will be taken care of. And he will take care of you, and you don't need to fear. And you don't have to fear about your future. You don't have to fear about your legacy. You don't have to fear about anything. Just let him take care of you. God is not going to change, and he's never going to leave you, and he's never going to leave you alone. So I'm going to close it here. We'll be doing something else next time. Please join me then.